Hello and welcome to third episode of Putting Your Best Foot Forward. Ace, your comeback. This is your host Guneet, and I'm here with a very special guest today. Today we talk about return to work with parenting. Like most people, when we decide to have families, we often have to choose to put either the job first or being a parent first. Some of us have even given up our jobs to take care of our precious ones. Like some take a break right after, when the baby is born, the newborn stage. Some continue till the child is a toddler. Some take a break when the kid reaches high school. But leave that aside. And now imagine a scene where a company provides support and a place where we could discuss our myriad of childcare issues, right from burping properly to getting them to behave properly to choosing subjects and college, where we could get competent professional guidance. How much better our lives could be, how much more dedicated we would be to the companies that we work for. So, leaving you with that thought, please welcome our new guest, Mr. Amit Singh Kelly from London. He's joining us from all the way from London, and thank you so much. Thank you and welcome, Amit.
Thank you very
He,
much.
Amit runs his own business and takes care of his family and child, along with educating companies about increased value that parents can bring to the companies if they feel that they have been supported when parents need them. Amit is a co founder of company for working parents, a company that helps organizations become more inclusive for their working parents. A former deputy head teacher, Amit uses his experience and his training as an ICF coach to create an environment in the workplace that is more empathetic and humane, and where parents can thrive both at work and at home. In addition to running coaching sessions and parental webinars, Amit also speaks publicly about his own personal story, having lost a parent and then becoming a parent to his daughter, born with three holes in her heart. Please welcome Mr. Amit Singh Kelly.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Uh, so, Amit, can you please tell our audience a little bit more about your personal and professional self?
Yeah, sure. So I guess maybe the personal self I can start with. So I'm part of the Indian diaspora. I'm born and raised in London in the UK. My family originates from Jalandhar in Punjab and also Tanzania in East Africa. I have two children, a girl and a boy, happily married. So from a professional point of view, as you mentioned, I used to be a vice principal or a deputy head teacher in a secondary school here in the UK. And more recently, over the last year and a half, I've set up my own business for working parents, which, as you so beautifully put, thank you, is all around creating a more inclusive workspace for parents. It's around helping organizations create a workplace where parents don't feel they have to make the choice between working and looking after their families at home. Especially actually when you think about parents in the South Asian culture, we're not only parents, sometimes we're also carers for our own parents. And that's not always taken into account, certainly here in the UK, because it's not necessarily the British way of things. We're not necessarily in the UK carers for our parents, but in our Asian communities, that still exists. So it's about raising awareness in the workplace and creating a workplace where you're able to attract and retain the very best talent. And often the very best talent is working parents.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree there. In fact, parents also, as Asians, as Southeast Asians, we have to take care. It's our responsibility to take care of our aging parents, family. So tell us, what made you start your journey as advocate for working parents?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think actually COVID, like with many people, COVID really changed my entire outlook on life and on work. Because here in the UK, we had two very big lockdowns, one in 2020 and one at the very start of 2021. And schools were shut down here in the UK as well. So we were working from home. All other industries were working from home. And I just thought that actually, when schools reopened, you can't work from home as a vice principal in a school. You've got to be in the environment. And I felt that I wanted a more of a work-life balance. Yes, I wanted to give back. I wanted to make a difference to the community, but at the same time, I wanted to be in charge of my own life a bit better. I had two young kids, and I decided that I didn't want to work in the traditional way anymore. I wanted to set my own business up that actually trains organizations to support people that were feeling like me, that were deciding to leave the workplace. I wanted to not necessarily have everybody following me, but actually creating a workplace where people felt they didn't have to make those choices. So helping workplaces create a more flexible environment, supporting their parents by educating them more on parenting topics, doing my storytelling and my webinars and those kinds of things.
Very interesting, actually, because many people are still, they don't want to resume work as in going to office regularly. They still want to be home and they want to work from home. They say our productivity is increased, and they can better take care of their families, their children, their parents, and everybody around
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah.
So tell me, what were the challenges that came your way while you were, when you started on this journey?
You mean the business journey or
Yeah,
previously?
the business journey and your personal journey. So tell us about both,
Oh,
please.
I can tell you about the business journey first, I guess. The obvious challenges in setting up a business is getting people to know that you exist, getting people to understand who you are, what your work is, why you're doing it, and also this space is quite new here in the UK, and I'm sure in India as well. It's a new space. Not every organization is or values this space very much because, of course, for me, it's a business. I'm going to come to your organization. I'm going to say that I will run webinars. I will do some one-to-one and group coaching for your parents. I'll do storytelling, but I want X amount of money. The business might say it's not a priority for me right now to spend on something like this. I have other priorities that are more important, like paying increased bills or whatever it might be. So I think one of the big challenges for me was, and still is getting people to know that I exist, and also convincing organizations and businesses that investing in my services is in the long term beneficial for them. Because here in the UK, more and more parents are leaving the workforce. Attraction and retention rates for organizations are very poor because those organizations that are going back to the old school way of doing things are not able to get the very best talent, because the very best talent are people of a parenting age, generally speaking. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. It's convincing people that there is a space for me, and convincing people to part with their company's money so that I can hopefully bring them some long-term benefits.
Yeah, yeah. And what were the challenges that you overcame personally to set this up? And
Well, the personal challenges obviously is my own story, and that's one of the sort of the bit I do about public speaking. I do my storytelling, and that is around. It predates COVID. It's around parenting, but it's both ends of the spectrum. It's around my own parent and then becoming a parent. So from my own parents' point of view, it's actually my mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in at the start of 2016, and she was young. She was 54 when she was diagnosed. Um, and it was really, I tell my story around what that was like as an only child, a child in the sort of South Asian, Indian diaspora, where we don't talk about certain types of cancers, I guess, ovarian being one of them, because it's in a woman's sort of private kind of area, and we don't talk about it so much. So a lot of what I do is raising awareness about those types of cancers that, if we don't talk about it, they're still going to affect us. Cancer does not discriminate. It doesn't care whose body it is housing itself in. It does not discriminate. It doesn't discriminate by age, by gender, by race, by anything. So if we're not talking about things like breast cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate cancer, then, our communities are not recognizing the signs. So by the time my mother was diagnosed, it was stage 3. I don't know whether we missed the signs. I don't know whether the doctors missed the signs. It's just one of those things. And really, I talk a lot about what that journey was like. Going through the whole process of being an only child, still living with my parents at that time, and trying to support her, trying to support myself, my father, trying to carry on working, just through that journey. And this was all pre-COVID, so it was a normal work time. And her journey had ups and downs. She was diagnosed and she went under treatment straight away for chemotherapy. The initial chemotherapy was fairly positive. They were able to reduce the size of the tumor. She had major surgery in the summer of 2016, called debulking surgery. So a lot of the ovaries in those areas were removed. A lot of the cancer was removed. It was major surgery. I think she was in for 9 or 10 hours. But it was successful in the sense that it managed to reduce the cancer. We were told that around that time or just after that, ultimately the cancer is incurable. But that didn't mean there was a death sentence placed on her. It just meant they would have to find ways for her to live with the cancer. They were never going to be able to remove it. Obviously, it meant that she probably wasn't going to live for another 20 or 25 years. But, with the right treatment, she would be able to live for at least a few more. In the end, the cancer did return. The surgery, while successful, her stitches took a long time to heal. In that time, the chemotherapy was delayed. The more chemotherapy she needed was delayed. The cancer returned. The chemotherapy she was then going under was quite clearly not working. Her physical health was deteriorating. We saw it on a daily basis. Her ability to move became restricted. Her ability to communicate became restricted. And we were seeing before our eyes, basically I was watching her die. I was watching my mother die before my eyes. It was then fast forward December 2017, or maybe a bit earlier. I think it was maybe November 2017. We went into hospital. I mean, she was under a hospital here called St. Bart's, a very, very reputable hospital for cancer. We went in there. She was very weak by this stage. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't walk by herself. I knew what was going to happen in that meeting. I think my father still had hope, but I knew what was going to happen in that meeting. They were going to assess her and decide the course of action. And they took one look at her. They didn't need to do any assessment. They took one look at her and decided that she could have no more chemotherapy. She wouldn't survive any more chemotherapy. So what they basically told us was that her cancer was terminal and there was nothing more they could do, and that we had to just take her home and, make her comfortable, look after her. Alongside all of this, I'm planning a wedding. I was set to get married in the summer of 2018. So, she had met my wife to be. She had given, her blessings. She very much liked my now wife. And we were planning a wedding. There were some complications because my wife is from Tanzania and her parents wanted to have the wedding in Tanzania. And for me, I wanted to have the wedding here so that my mum could be present or somehow be involved in it. So there were lots of these complications at the time going on. We then decided very quickly that for my mum to at least see her son get married, we would bring the wedding forward, but have a very small civil wedding in the local registry office where we would just have immediate guests and have my mother there. And that wedding we booked for the 6th of January, 2018. And in that week, we realized that my mother's condition was worsening substantially. She was not conscious very much. When she was, I think her sight had gone. So we sort of thought about whether there was any value at all in having that wedding on the 6th of January, because even if she was there, I don't think she would have known what was happening. We then decided that week, I can't remember if we cancelled the wedding. We certainly thought about postponing it. In the end, it didn't matter because my mother died on the morning of the 5th of January. So she, had we kept the wedding, she wouldn't have made it anyway. So she died in the morning of the 5th. She died at home. We were at home. She was surrounded by myself, my father, her sister, my Masi, her mother, my Nani. Her mother was, still fit and alive. My mother was the youngest of her 5 children. So for her, it was very difficult, of course. She spoke no English. So for her, it was, she didn't understand necessarily what the nurses were saying. And we were trying to communicate whilst trying to protect her as well. So that all happened, then, and she died on the 5th. And, I still got married in the summer of that year. It was a bittersweet wedding because obviously there's lots of happiness from my end, but there was lots and lots of crying because my mother's absence was very much felt. So the entire wedding, and as you know, in our weddings, they're week-long, 2-week-long, the entire process, all of it was really a tribute to her at the same time as being a celebration. Yep. So that's really one part of the story. One part is dealing with my mother's loss and all of that. We then, I guess, fast forward to my daughter being born. Now, my daughter was born in May of 2020. Now, if you remember now, that was peak COVID. So here in the UK, we were in peak lockdown. My mother was, my daughter was born in the lockdown. I wasn't, I was barely allowed in the hospital. We found out when she was 8 weeks old, when she was going for her immunizations, the doctor said that she has a heart murmur. You need to just go and get checked out. I can't immunize her until then. So we went to get her checked out. We didn't think anything of it. Of course, at that point here in the UK, only one parent was allowed into the hospitals because of COVID. So I used to stay in the car. My wife would go in. Anyway, a few tests later in the local hospital, they realized that there was potentially something quite serious wrong with her. So they referred her to Great Ormond Street. So Great Ormond Street is, world famous for being, one of the world's best children's hospital. She was referred there, again, months and months of testing. Eventually, they diagnosed her as having 3 holes in her heart. So for us, that was, wow, first-time parents, COVID, I'm still grieving for my mother. And now being told that my daughter has got these 3 holes in her heart where, we are told that whilst, she will probably survive, they can't make any guarantees. So when you hear things like that, you start preparing for the worst. And really, going through COVID, I mean, we had meeting after meeting, appointment after appointment at Great Ormond Street. And during that time, I think I was allowed in the hospital maybe once out of a dozen appointments. So my wife used to go in and she used to get all of this heavy medical language imposed upon her that she didn't understand. I was trying to dial in on WhatsApp call, but the reception hospitals is so poor that I was in and out. I used to go for long walks in a deserted London because London was closed. And when she would come out, I would ask her lots of questions. She wouldn't necessarily have the answers. We would argue, we would fight because I was thinking she wasn't asking the right questions. And she was telling me that to listen to all the consultants was very heavy for her. So it put a lot of strain on us. In the end, she was scheduled to have surgery. Twice it was cancelled. In October and November of 2020, her surgery was cancelled. Then on Christmas Day 2020, out of the blue, my daughter was taken ill. She fell ill. And they always say, trust your parental instinct when your child is not well, especially when they're a baby and they're not able to communicate. And we decided to take her into the local accident and emergency. And they, out of nowhere, diagnosed her with a diaphragmatic hernia. So her bowel had perforated into her hernia, into her diaphragm, and was stopping her ability to breathe. So they then transferred her to Great Ormond Street. She had emergency surgery within the next couple of days on that diaphragmatic hernia. So that came out of the blue. We had no idea that this was even a possibility. So again, my wife was the only one allowed in the hospital. We were not in lockdown in December 2020, but there was heavy speculation that we were about to go into the second lockdown because COVID rates at that point were very, very high. So I was only allowed in the hospital when my daughter came out of surgery to see her, which, as you can imagine, is not necessarily what you want to see. Anyway, the UK then went into lockdown in January of 2021, second lockdown. Her surgery finally happened in February of 2021 on the 4th occasion of her heart surgery. So she's just about recovered from the diaphragmatic hernia. She's now having open heart surgery. So they opened her chest. She was kept alive by a ventilator. Her heart was not working. They repaired 2 of the holes in her heart. The third one is still not repaired. We're still monitoring that. It's not life-threatening, but it just needs monitoring. And again, I was allowed into, she was in intensive care for 2 or 3 days after surgery. I was allowed in just after. And to see your baby daughter, I mean, she was, no bigger than the length of my arm, in intensive care, connected to all these tubes, moaning and groaning. It was really awful. And I just felt at that time that there was something I had done wrong. The world must be against me. If there is a higher power, he must be against me, because why would I have gone through all of this over the last few years, whilst the rest of the world is getting on with their lives? So it's a really, really difficult period of time in our lives. But when she had the surgery, it took some while. I forgot to mention that between diagnosis and surgery, she was fed milk through a tube in her nose because she wasn't able to take to my wife's breast because she was losing too many calories. So she was given special high calorie milk that she was fed through a tube that we had to give her. So there was lots of things that we had to go through all alone because it was COVID. We couldn't rely on our wider family because we weren't not allowed to see them. And we were first-time parents. We were no experts by any means on how to navigate this. So it was incredibly, incredibly difficult dealing with my mother's loss and then the joy of getting married and then the joy of having a baby, especially having a baby girl. I was determined I wanted to have a baby girl first. to fill the void that was left by my mother's absence. And then to be told that she was, born with these 3 years and a half, and then to go through all that process of her illness and COVID, it was incredibly, incredibly challenging. Looking back, my wife and I sometimes talk about it. We're not too sure how we did it, but I think we were just in fight mode, that nothing could get us. We were determined that our daughter was going to survive. She carries my mother's name. There was no way I was going to lose 2 people who carry the same name in such a close period of time. We just fought. And I guess my daughter, she's an absolute fighter. She carries the scar from the top, from the bottom of her neck down to her belly button. She'll carry that scar for life, but we will remind her every single day that it's a sign of her strength, and it's
Absolutely.
maybe a sign of her grandmother's influence on her. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, but that's a very touchy and a very scary story at the same time. I mean, I've moved, absolutely moved, and at the same time, I'm really scared about, and I'm wondering how you actually went through it. I mean, some really trying times, really trying times.
Absolutely. I mean, I think looking back now, because it's been a few years, I don't know how I went through watching my mother die. I mean, I know it happens to other people. It's a circle of life, but watching your hero, and my mother really was my hero, and she was young. She died at 56. She died 5 days before my 30th birthday, a day before my rescheduled wedding. So all these things, it was terrible to watch it happen to her. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I got through it. And then I don't know how I went through a wedding and then went through my daughter's birth. But I guess if life teaches you anything, it's that you are given the cards. It's up to you how you deal with those cards. You can sink, you can fall into all sorts of issues, or you can say, I have to get through this. I have to live. I have to live for everything around me, and that's, I guess, what I chose.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. That's really inspiring. So, another question after this. Sometimes we see that parents are very ill equipped to be facing parenthood in today's times and era. So, you counsel them. But how do you counsel them? Could you give us some examples on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning that all of us as parents at some point in our parenting journeys are ill-equipped. I was ill-equipped to deal with a baby born with such severe medical conditions. Other people might be ill-equipped to deal with a 13-year-old that suddenly says he has started smoking, or whatever it might be. We all at different stages of our parenting journey feel ill-equipped. So I think parent coaching isn't necessarily around telling people what the answer is. It's around supporting parents dealing with particular issues and helping them come to their own conclusions. I don't give parents the answers simply because I don't have the answers. Here in the UK, potentially now in India as well, we deal with some really high sort of high-end kind of emotional issues. For example, teenagers now that come out as potentially homosexual, or in this country now transgender, whatever it might be. I know those problems exist in India. They're maybe just not talked about as much as they are here in the UK. That doesn't mean parents are equipped with the tools to know how to deal with such an issue. So my job is not to give answers. My job is to help parents understand themselves better, effectively communicate with their children better, improve their relationships with their child better. It's about going through practical issues. It's about going through practical steps. What would you do in this scenario? What would you do in that scenario? How do you think your reaction is making your child feel? How is your child's behavior making you feel? How can we work on that? How can you change the way that you communicate with them? How can you tone down the anger and perhaps change the language that you're using? So it's all around the skills, and it's all around coaching them to be more effective in what they do, not about telling them, okay, you found drugs in your son's room, here's what you should do. No, I don't give answers. I empower parents to be able to come up with their own answers, because they know their children better than anybody.
Absolutely. That's a very nice approach. That's actually how I would expect my counselor to, guide me through it.
Yeah.
So tell me, while your mother was sick and your daughter was, going through this illness, so did you take a lot of leaves from your work job?
I think when my mother was ill, it was pre-COVID, so there was no such thing as working from home or anything like that. And as I mentioned to you, I was in a school environment, so missing school meant that there were children there not getting what they needed. So I had to find a fine balance. I did get some leave to go to some major appointments for her, but generally it was my father that did most of the going to the hospital and taking the places. He had calmed down his work and sort of changed his job to make it much less stressful, so that he was able to get the time off he needed. Towards the end of my mother's life, I sort of made conscious decisions to stay at home, and I got to the stage where I wasn't asking for permission. I sort of made the decision that I need to be at home with my mother. She is dying. She may die today. She might not die for 2 weeks, but I'm not taking that risk of not being there when it happens. Because then we then had the Christmas holidays, because she died on the 5th of January. We then had 2 weeks off for Christmas. So actually in those last moments, I was there anyway. I was there with her anyway. And then we went back to school for a couple of days, and I didn't go. I decided not to go back. And then she passed, and I needed more time off for, as we do for the mourning period, the source period, the funeral. So I felt that it was actually okay. I didn't need to take much time off because my father was there while she was still okay. Towards the end, I used to go and visit, because she stayed for some time at St. Bart's. So every day after work, I would go into central London and go and see her for a few hours before coming home. So that was my daily ritual. It was my daily routine until she was transferred home. In my daughter's case, it was a bit different because it was COVID. So when she was born and we found out we were in lockdown, we were at home, I used to just log off and tell my boss I'm going to the appointment. There were no questions asked. In that period between the two lockdowns, when we were back in school, there were some days that I took off, and my work were very, very supportive. They recognized that this was my daughter. I was a first-time parent. I was grieving. I was finding it difficult. It wasn't, I wasn't taking a day off every week, for example, but every now and then I would take time off. And then in the second lockdown in January 21, up till her surgery, I was, whenever I needed to, I would just go. Same with my wife. She was given the flexibility. But I don't know if we would have had that same flexibility if COVID wasn't there, if we were in the office. I don't think the office would have given us that much flexibility. So in that sense, COVID for us was probably a blessing.
Actually, I think the workplace rituals are relaxing a little bit with the onset of COVID. That's one silver lining in the dark cloud of whatever has happened around the world. That offices do recognize that, they've become more liberal in, accepting that this is a part of life of the individual. The person who's working for the company is not just an island in itself. It's the whole family. The society goes with it, with that person. So that person is never in isolation. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And that's what we do now for working parents. The work that we do is all around organizations embracing the fact that their employees have this other life, that before COVID, we treated work as though work was number one. We would miss key events because work came first, because we had to earn money. We were scared of what our boss would say. But I think in a post-COVID world now, we're recognizing that nothing should ever come before our loved ones. No work should ever come before that. So either work has two choices. Either it can say, no, you're not allowed time off, in which case the employee now might turn around and say, right, well, here's my notice. I will be leaving in 30 days. Or the work says, all right, I recognize you need this. Take the time that you need. It'd be appreciated if you could do a few extra hours, maybe on another day, or we can find a way to balance it. Yeah. Those kind of organizations now, I think, are the ones that are going to thrive in the future. The ones that are much more understanding.
Yeah, we think that ways as well. In fact, the other day, there was this conference which was going on, and this was a point which is very validly raised. So you've told us how your colleagues and bosses reacted to your taking, whatever leaves that you needed to, that they were quite supportive. That's very heartening, because in India, we still have a long way to go. Although now we do see, change around the corner.
Yeah, that's good. I think one of the things I've noticed perhaps in India, not that I've worked or lived there, but having been there, so many times, and just, seeing work environments, I think one of the things that still exists in India is the element of fear. I think there's a lot of leadership by fear, and a lot of people that are in positions of authority, they instill a sense of fear in people that work for them. So you feel uncomfortable in approaching those managers. You can't ask them for time off because you're scared of their response. But it's good to see that that's changing. It's good to see that leaders now are embracing leadership is where you take the entire team with you, and anybody should feel comfortable and confident asking for anything. Even if the answer is going to be no, they should at least feel comfortable asking that. And I'm glad to see that change is being embraced.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me, were there any mentors or individuals who guided you on your new journey to re-establish yourself through this? Uh, Setting up your new uh, role, your new work, your new career?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to people that already have established businesses about how they go about it. I'm pretty active on social media, so I do follow and communicate with people on social media that are maybe much further down the journey from me. I've taken on some coaching myself to be coached, because I think every coach needs a coach in order to sort of help me think about my priorities. I think social media can be quite toxic sometimes, because we see people on there posting about their successes, and you think, oh my God, that person is doing so well. I've got nothing in my diary today. I'm not going to earn any money today. I'm not going, this is a problem. And so I think, being coached has just helped me have some perspective that actually, yes, there might be people doing really, really well on social media, but some of them are posting things because they also need it as a selling technique. And I do it's the same thing, because that's the way social media ultimately works. So yes, I've had some mentoring from people who run businesses, certainly in my area, my space, the kind of employee well-being and looking after staff well-being and morale and those kinds of things. And I think that's really necessary, because running your own business, it can be very lonely. I've gone from an environment of working with thousands of young children and hundreds of colleagues to now working from my office at home. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I absolutely love working on my own. I'm an only child, so I've always been on my own. But at the same time, you do sometimes miss the company of other people, and so I need to fill my days with work, basically.
That's good to know, actually, that we keep ourselves busy. Uh, but tell me, career and parenting conflicts are common challenges that many individuals face when trying to balance their professional responsibilities with their roles as parents. These conflicts arise due to demands of time, commitments associated with both aspects of life. So, would there be any advice that you would want to give to our audience who have made the decision to return to work, but have small children? Uh,
Yeah, I think it's really important. It's really easy for me to say to everybody, put your children first, tell your work to get lost if you're not happy. But of course, we live in the real world. People need to earn money. People need to pay bills. People need to feed their families. So I completely appreciate that the majority of us, we have to work. It's as simple as that. But I think now what I would say to people is we have so much more choice in where we want to work, because there are so many organizations that are moving with the times, that are offering so much flexibility, that are offering so many benefits and support to young working parents or even older working parents, that actually we don't have to stick with the jobs that we've done in the past, where those companies maybe have old draconian methods and want you in the office 5 days a week. They don't care about what you do with your children, or the fees that you have to pay to have them looked after, or the appointments you have to go to.
yeah.
What the only advice I would give to people is, yes, I appreciate you need to work, but please think about the choice that you now have on offer. You don't need to go back to the same organization if you don't feel that you're getting benefits from that organization. The same in India as in the UK. There is so much choice and India's industry is growing exponentially in terms of what's on offer there now. In fact, there are people from the UK going to India to work, such as the size of the Indian industry. So the choice is unrivaled. So I would say to parents that if you're going back to work with young children, put your children first, 100%. But whilst I say that, I respect you need to work. I understand you need to work. So find an organization that can work around you, rather than you having to work around that organization. And find a leader, find a boss, find a manager that you can talk to as though you would talk to a friend, and not somebody that you feel uncomfortable approaching when you need that support, because that's an unhealthy and toxic environment and relationship to be in.
That's a very good advice, actually. I would, had I been at that stage and would have returned to work, I would have actually definitely followed that. But tell me, so we have some clients here, audience, some members in the audience who have children in teenage. What advice would you give them if they wanted to, get back and restart their journey to return to work?
Yeah, a lot of the work that I do actually is with parents of teenagers. They are the ones that I coach the most. The thing about teenagers, of course, is that the problems are not limited to one or two different areas. Teenagers present with them so many challenges, a variety of challenges they present. So I think if you're returning to work and you have teenage children, it's about making sure that you have an effective relationship with that child. Your communication with that child is effective, and it's learning strategies of how to communicate with your child. Because remember what it's like for us going as teenagers, and us coming from more conservative, I guess, backgrounds, and perhaps cultures where we can't be so forthcoming with our parents. Certainly when we were growing up, I know it's changing now. We need to put ourselves in our teenagers' shoes. And I mean, I watch, my wife and I, we love watching the Indian programs that come on Netflix and Prime, the real gritty dramas. But my goodness, are some of those advanced? I mean, the things they show,
Yeah.
we would never have seen on screen, and they're probably not on TV in India, and they're probably on Amazon and Prime only, and Netflix only. But what it does show is that there is a section of society in India that does live like that. It does have such an advanced way of looking at things in terms of gender issues, race issues, caste issues, class issues, sex issues. And I think as a parent, if we want to thrive both at work and at home, we need to build open channels of communication with our children. If we are still holding things back because they are taboo, we can't discuss sex, for example, or we can't discuss drugs, for example, or those things, then we need to think about whether our children will be doing things without our knowledge, which most of them probably are. Now, would we prefer that they are open and honest with us, or would we prefer to find something out from somebody else about what our child has been getting up to because they've been seen doing something, or they're in trouble because of a reason? So I always encourage parents, and especially Asian parents, Indian parents, to really try and break through that taboo, as difficult as it may be, because we have strong cultural and some of us have strong religious values, and we feel that there are certain things that are just not appropriate to talk about. My view is the opposite. I challenge that view, and I say that actually with our child, who is the person or the people that we love more than anybody on this planet, nothing should be off limits. We should be able to talk to them, and they should be able to talk to us about absolutely anything and everything. So once you build those open channels of communication, once you are effectively communicating with them, your relationship will improve. And that relationship then isn't as much of a problem when you're going back to work, because sometimes working parents are finding it hard to balance a challenging teenager versus a challenging workplace. Let's deal with the easy part first, which is improving your relationship with your child.
Absolutely. No, that's very well said. In fact, I was blessed. I was few of the blessed families to have an upbringing where we were really open with our parents. Although we were in a larger joint family, but we had complete trust, and the parents had complete trust. It was 100% transparent relationship. So what we thought was, what they would get, they would
Yeah,
know
excellent.
exactly, and we were encouraged. Both me and my sibling were encouraged to put it like that. So now, dear audience, remember that finding the right balance between your career and parenting requires ongoing adjustments and patience. As Amit has rightly put, for every individual situation is unique, and the key is to tailor strategies that work best for your family's needs and circumstances. And it is okay to seek advice from mentors. It is perfectly acceptable, perfectly okay to seek advice from mentors, friends, or professional counselors who have experience in managing these types of conflicts. So that is the reason we brought in Mr. Amit Singh Kelly today here, so that we can have a different perspective, a professional perspective on the challenges that parents who are returning to work, not just parents who are returning to work, but parents in general face with bringing up children, because they have to balance their time at work and their time commitments with children and other family members. So, and for any other services like your resume update, your coaching, your resume coaching, your personal development, please get in touch with yours truly, Guneet. And for parental advice, please reach out to Amit. Thank you so much. Any questions that you might have, please do write into us and we will be sure to get back to you. Thank you. And
Thanks very
bye-bye for
much.
now. Thank you, Amit, for joining us today.
Pleasure.